feel like the media over focuses on the West Metro. Maybe the North Metro gets the second amount of love. But the South and East Metro, I've always thought, get ignored. And some of this is just the nature of like people talk about where they live and their experience. But the danger of that is you can miss important trends. And one of those trends that popped up this week is an explosion of growth in the South Metro. And if you've been following some of the political discussions in our suburbs, you know the South Metro is feeling it. Communities like Lakeville, which has actually put a moratorium on new housing construction. And, you know, these are just issues they're looking at. They're like, our schools are blowing up. And I think if you don't live in the South Metro, you're like, what is going on there? Top 5 cities, when you look at growth, starting in April of 2020 and going to July of 2025 from the Census Bureau. Rosemount, they are up 24%. Lakeville, 14%. Shakopee, 13%. Cottage Grove, 12%. Chaska, 10%. The growth is south. And Luke Hellier is the mayor of Lakeville. He's with us on the John Schuster Coldwell Banker Hotline, where he certainly is not surprised by this data because, Mayor, you're experiencing this every day down there, aren't you?
Yeah, we definitely are, Jason. We definitely feel it. You know, we had more people move to Lakeville from 2020 to 2025 than the entire cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul combined. And
the raw number is staggering. It's almost 10,000 new residents over the last 5 years.
Yeah, and we're feeling it. I mean, there's pressure on our schools for sure. There's pressures on our infrastructure, but you know, we're managing, and the builders have kept up with the demand.
What's going on? Why are so many people locating over the last 5 years in these South Metro, Lakeville, Rosemount, Shakopee, Cottage Grove? What's going on?
Yeah. Well, I think a little bit the secret got out that it was a great place to raise a family. The schools are very strong. We got a lot of natural resources. And I think they figured out that 35W is easy to get to work when you probably can only have to commute a couple days a week.
Right.
So we're a beneficiary of the post-pandemic economy where people are saying, you know what, I don't mind sitting in traffic 2 days a week or 3 days a week if I can move out to the South Suburbs and have a lot of these amenities versus living closer into the city to have a shorter commute.
When you look at Lakeville, the location is great. Like, it's very easy to get to. But when you look at being a city of 70,000 residents and now a city of 80,000 residents, that you mentioned the growing pains, that is a real concern. That's a massive difference, isn't it?
Oh, it is. I mean, we had to pass a $140 million bond referendum last week to expand our 3 middle schools because 2 of the 3 were at 105% of capacity. And, you know, I'll just say this. I mean, I'm much rather have the pain of growth than the pain of decline, for sure.
My God, and, yes, no doubt.
You know, so, but, you know, and it works through it. And, you know, the nice thing about Lakeville is even though we're 80,000, we have a historic downtown, I like to call it. So we're able to keep a lot of that small town community feel, even though we have grown the way we have.
You do have a great downtown, and I think that's part of why people are attracted. I think you also have an interesting distinction location-wise of essentially, I think of Lakeville as like the southernmost suburb. Because once we get past you, then you're like Elko, New Market, or Northfield. Like, you're pretty much Faribault before you get to the next big city. So even if you're like a Mayo Clinic person working in Rochester, Lakeville has some appeal in location wise. Plus, you had some land, right, that allowed people to be able to build houses.
Sure. I mean, we're 38 square miles, so we're one of the bigger cities by geography in the metro. And we still have about a third of our land left to develop. And a lot of it depends on, you know, if farmers are going to pass down the farm to the next generation or if they're going to exit and sell out. So that a lot depends on some of those personal decisions, but we have plenty of space left to go. I like to joke when people ask me where I'm mayor, I said, we're the last 8 miles of civilization before you get to Iowa. And that's exactly, as you describe it.
Luke Hellier is with us, the mayor of Lakeville. Now, obviously, you mentioned the growing pains. There are sort of the obvious things, right? That do you have enough school? Do you have enough infrastructure? Do you have enough, restaurants and retail and businesses and all of that kind of stuff? But the other side is the tension that always comes in Minnesota with growth, where you say, are we losing the character of what made us attractive in the first place? Are we turning too many cornfields into subdivisions? How do you balance that?
Yeah, and I 100% you're right, and it's a lot of feedback we get. And as a local leader, I really work with our businesses and residents to really lean in to some of the stuff that has made us great. We have an awesome park system. We just invested a ton of money into Lake Marion's Park, Antlers Park, and Lakeville Brewing has a kind of a satellite location there now. And so we really lean into the amenities. And then our Panaprog, which is our town festival, that is, 4 or 5 days long in July, where everybody kind of comes together, and that allows everybody to see each other and do a lot of fun activities. And you keep that charm of why we got to where we are, even though we've got 80,000 people.
The other angle here is that you guys did just pass this temporary housing moratorium. And at a time when you look at, we need more housing. We need more affordable housing. And Lakeville does have the ability to provide some housing that is maybe more affordable for a first-time home buyer, where you can get a little bit of land or you can build some townhouses. How do you weigh? You mentioned, like, okay, on the one hand, you're listening to people who are like, don't turn all our cornfields into houses. On the other hand, like, you got somebody like me who's saying, Luke, we need growth in our region and we need housing. And for you guys to shut it down when you have land available is a negative overall when you're trying to get more housing out there.
Yeah. The moratorium really is a 1-year pause to kind of give us some breathing room to kind of relook at some of our zoning and land use. Part of that is, just a quick example, Cedar Avenue was going to be a bus rapid transit line. And so we zoned expecting that line to be there. Well, that's not going to happen now. So we have to rethink about that corridor, how much density, how can we create an opportunity for having some multifamily with maybe commercial and retail. So we're going to look at that corridor, for instance, and then more broadly about how we can keep our property tax base as diverse as possible, which is why people want to come here. We have a huge industrial park, but there's this big push to convert commercial land into residential, which in an Egan is great, right? They need redevelopment. It makes a lot of sense. But for a city like ours, where we want to try to maintain what we have on a commercial tax base to keep our taxes low, we've got to look at exactly which parcels still make sense for that. We've got 1,300 lots right now that are permitted or could be permitted and ready to go that aren't impacted by the moratorium. So at the end of the day, you're probably not going to see a ton of real slowdown. We're at more permits this year than we were at the same time last year. It's just a matter of not doing any kind of raw land that hasn't had a first look this year.
Do you see a time where Lakeville is a community of 100,000 residents?
I wouldn't be surprised. I think, the big difference between us and like a Bloomington that has that many is they've got the airport and mall. We don't necessarily have like a big signature thing that would draw that many people, but I could be wrong. I mean, we've got the land for it. We've got the natural resources that draw people. So maybe, I think the Met Council a few years ago thought we would not exceed 85,000, and now that we're at 80. So I don't think 90 is out of the reach.
Do you need something? Should there be an amphitheater or some kind of major attraction? As I said at the beginning of the segment, I think the South Metro gets sort of ignored, and maybe part of it is because it's housing. It's great housing, great neighborhoods, but there aren't a ton of Burnsville has their performing arts center, but there's not a ton of stuff exactly.
Yeah, we've got a few smaller assets. We've got the art center that the city owns downtown where we can do small performances. We have an outdoor amphitheater, but stay tuned. Later this summer, we might have some news to announce about that.
I mean, you've got your gas station speakeasy that has gotten.
Yeah.
I feel like I went to that and did a video forever ago, and now all of a sudden it's on ABC News is down there doing stories. The Wall Street Journal. It's pretty cool.
It is, and I think you were the catalyst to kick that all off because not that much longer, Wall Street Journal was there. So
I mean, I'm not going to argue with that. I mean, what a leader I am. Thank you for pointing it out.
But, downtown has been a big deal for us. When I was in high school, it was struggling. It was like a lot of downtowns and small towns were, right? The grocery store closed, the furniture store closed, the drugstore closed. But Lakeville Brewing opened in 2016 by buying the VFW, and that really flipped it on its head. We've had a bunch of restaurant investment since then, and has really been kind of a domino effect, which has led to the Farmer's Grandson opening and the Speakeasy. And there will be more of that. I think there's this intent to quote unquote expand downtown because of that. And so I think you'll see a lot more in the coming years.
It's pretty cool. I'm in a way, there are many cities that are jealous of you, but as you mentioned, there are the positives and the negatives, but it is a reminder of sort of the great stuff that's going on in the South Metro. Obviously, raw numbers matter. We talk percentage because that tells a story, but Lakeville added 9,773 residents. Woodbury added about 6,400. Blaine about 6,400. Rosemount about 62. I mean, this is a lot of growth. There's a lot of growth, and it's a little bit of the shift as you see, like Maple Grove added 3,600 people, but Maple Grove is getting close to built out. So you start to you say, where can people live? And you guys are really taking on a leadership role there for sure.
Yeah, we're trying. I mean, as you said, I think you get to the point where when you're built out, there's certainly a slowdown. We've got a ton of land left to go. And, it really depends on where some of the landowners want to do. And if we continue to see this, not passing on the generation, so to speak, of farmland, that it'll probably speed up a lot quicker than we expect.
One more question, Luke, because a texter says there are rumors that to sustain the growth in Lakeville, there is talk about annexing neighborhood communities or townships. Is that something that is under consideration?
Yeah, we actually at our next council meeting, we'll be working through an annexation of 600 acres, but that's specifically for the industrial park. We have one of the fastest growing industrial parks. In fact, Domino's for their entire state of Minnesota, their distribution will come out of Lakeville now. We just approved that on Monday night, for instance. But there are some landowners who are in the Lakeville school district, but not Lakeville City, that would like to build in Lakeville, which would require some legal maneuvering through the courts to happen. So that has been discussed, but today there's nothing kind of report on that.
All right. Luke Hellier, really appreciate the time. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
Mayor Lakeville, talking about the huge growth that's going on. I just think it's very interesting. The South Metro, the question is, as we talked about, like what becomes the thing? When you have 80,000, 90,000 residents in a community, you do start to have more demand for some of those destination type things. Pretty cool. Drive Time is going to return in just a minute because Mike Lindell's got his hand out. Candidate for governor here in Minnesota who wants millions of dollars for the Donald Trump slush fund. We'll talk about the outrage that is when we come back.
Drive Time with DeRusha is fueled by Luther Kia of Bloomington. Always online at lutherkiaofbloomington.com.
When is the last time that you got your skin checked out? It's Jason here for Tureen Dermatology. TureenDermatology.com is the website. We were talking about growth. And Dr. Mohiba Tureen has been my dermatologist for years. When she first set up shop here in the Twin Cities, she had one office, one little location in Roseville. Today, there are more than 10 and more coming online over the next couple of months. I'll tell you that. And I was talking to her about this the other day, and she said, Jason, we're not growing just because, I want to get bigger or bigger. That's not it. They're growing because there are more opportunities to get great skincare, great dermatologists closer to where people live. Communities like Lakeville, where they set up shop, and Tureen Dermatology, before they showed up, if you wanted to see a dermatologist in Lakeville, you would wait 3, 4, 5 months. Today, you wait 3 weeks and get an appointment at Tureen Dermatology. That's true at all of their locations. So don't wait. Don't have that mystery bump or mark or mole on your skin. Get it checked out. Tureen, Tareen, dermatology.com.